Selfless Revolutionaries is a book about the impact of the thinking of Steve Biko through Black consciousness and Black theology as an offshoot of Black consciousness. And it is also talking about a global ethic of solidarity and resistance. When I was in the United States teaching there for 5 years between 2012 and the end of 2016, when I got there in 2012, Trayvon Martin was shot in Florida. The Black Lives Matter movement started, initiated by 3 Black queer women, dipped a little bit because the presence of Barack Obama as one of imperialism's most effective agents in the world and amongst our people, the Black face in the most powerful position of the world, and the expectation that things might change, thinking, and when he came out and he said, Trayvon Martin could have been my son, everybody thought, oh yes, now we have the backing of everything. He never meant that, of course, as is very, very clear in everything that came out in his policies, that Black people were actually much worse off after the Obama years than before, that his words sounded like he was articulating our dreams and our hopes, but his actions were the actions of the one that served empire and neoliberal capitalism. And somebody like Cornel West saw that quite early. Yamata Taylor, a young woman who teaches at Princeton University, she saw that quite early, but for many, many Black people in the United States, within that context, you must see the rise of Black Lives Matter. And so a few years later, 2 years later, Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson, in Missouri. I was invited to come and speak to the community and to preach on the Sunday first. And I said, I can't preach on Sunday if I haven't first met with the people in the community. So on Friday, I met with the young people of Black Lives Matter who were on the streets and went to jail from the community from where he came. On Saturday morning, I met with community organization. On Saturday afternoon, I met with the clergy who were part of the struggle in Ferguson. And on Sunday morning, only I preached after I had heard all of that. And so 2 things struck me there. It was the absolute determination of the young people, and the fact that the church in general in the United States, that same church that was so much part of the civil rights movement, could not accommodate the new generation that was represented in Black Lives Matter. And they told me how they would went to visit churches and how they were not given chance to speak or shut out of the door. And in one place they even called the police on them. It was that hard and that tense. So I said, and they came with a surprising question. They said to me, look, what is it that you guys did in the 1970s and in the 1980s that made you do what you do, and successful in so many ways? Of course, I had to qualify our success, seeing what we are doing today, in what situation we are now. But even so, that was the movement that broke the back of apartheid, clearly. And we talked about that. And so for them to ask about us made clear to me that they still see the connections between, there's no Black Lives Matter movement in their eyes. It was never meant to be a domestic movement. It was never meant to be a movement just of the Black communities there. It was always meant to be a liberation movement, an inclusive revolutionary movement that was revolutionary enough to open its doors and include so many other causes. So when they have a Black Lives Matter march, you see the people for climate change are there. You see the people against neoliberal capitalism and the banking system are also there. You see the LGBTQI flag there. You see all of those things there. And I must say, it gladdens my heart to see that they break down the silos that divide the struggle. And they could see that it is all about the same thing. Oppression has different forms, but the source of that oppression is still the same. So I saw that. And they talked about Frans van Norman, they talked about Biko. The 2015-2016 student fees must fall rise. Also the same thing. They quoted the Biko here. They talked about black consciousness, not always in the right way, not always, and sometimes disconnected from the context of Biko and disconnected from their own context. But they still knew there was something there 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago that makes sense to us. So when I got back and I started thinking about this, what is it that makes black consciousness and Biko and black theology so powerfully relevant? It is because the students are understanding that the basic causes of their unfreedom that arose for a generation and 2 generations before, through the 70s and the 80s, those causes are still there, and those causes are exacerbated. Because, as I say in the title of one book, we found pharaohs on both sides of the blood-red waters. We thought we had fought a pharaoh in the Egypt of our apartheid days. We came across the Red Sea, and now we find another pharaoh in the so-called Promised Land. And the thing is, this pharaoh looks exactly like us. A black face in power makes no difference to the question of justice, and no guarantee to the question of real freedom and dignity for our people. They found with Obama, and we were finding here in South Africa. So we could talk with those students there, and with those young people there, and with our young people. Does a blackface as a blackface make a difference? No, unless they are committed to justice and freedom and dignity, and unless they are committed to all of these things and to make these changes that are necessary and give our people real freedom. It's not different. They are just the same, because they serve the same powers. And I mean, this is, by the way, exactly what I said way back in 1983 with the launch of the United Democratic Front. And so in this book, I ask all of these questions, and I talk about Biko, and I analyze very closely. I read again. I write what I like. And it's amazing how rich his thinking is, how many things I found that I had read but not thought about it in the same way, that I had written about but now have to revisit because I have new experiences, I've seen new things, I've heard new thoughts, I see how the world has changed or not changed. How Biko was right when way back in 1970, Biko said, if we only have a black face in an office, and nothing changes fundamentally with our economics and our politics, and this is his word, it will be like yesterday. And yesterday, that is a title in the book of one of the chapters, being like yesterday. So Biko's thinking has become powerfully relevant and now so important for this new generation. And when I came back here, and this is the other thing, I all of a sudden found that I was invited to speak at different places. This place, UWC, Department of Theology and Religion, invited me to come and give a lecture on black theology. Domain Solomons had booked a place, and it turned out that the place was too small. People were standing because there were students from other faculties who came to listen. And it gave me the idea, well, look at here, I mean, students are really thirsty, they are hungry, they want to know. I get an invitation to Bloemfontein, of all places, To the theology faculty, they are one of the most conservative places in the country, but there's a new young generation of young people teaching there. And so I get there. I was supposed to have a conversation with the theology class. I get there, and I hear that the word is spread on the campus. They have to book at short notice the large hall on the campus to accommodate all the students from across the campus who want to hear. At Pretoria University, I'm teaching black theology there, but it's just for the postgraduate students. There are students who call me and they say, will you please do a Zoom thing with us? And they invited people from everywhere. Students' initiative, young people. I said to Teto, my goodness, you've pulled off a thing here today. But he says, but Doc, the thing is that everybody wants to know. That's where that book comes from. And it is asking that question. And to your point as to what lessons are we to learn, I've already alluded to that. That thing, that euphoria that broke out in 1994, that told us freedom has come. The mistake that we made is that we allowed our freedom to be defined by somebody else. That was not the freedom that we fought for. It's not our definition of freedom. Freedom is not freedom when you have political freedom, you have the right to vote, but nobody listens to your voice. It's not freedom when you have the right to vote, but that's where it ends. And it's not freedom when you have to vote for the same people over and over and over again, although they are the people who are the most corrupt that you can find, so that you lose all trust in every single democratic institution, from parliament to the courts. Here, that's where we are right now. And young people are so angry that half of them want to burn down the place, and the other half just say, just leave me alone, I don't want anything to do with this. I mean, how did we come and end up here? That was a mistake that we made. We thought that when the ANC came, this was the coming of the kingdom of God. We thought that liberation, revolution that they had stolen from us is the revolution that they will continue. They did not. They wanted to stifle it. They wanted to kill it. And they did. So we made those mistakes. Identity politics is always the wrong choice to make. And unless you look at people and you demand from them that they do the justice that our people not need but deserve, and that's the focus of their politics, they are no good. And we have a situation here. We've had a TRC, but the Truth and Reconciliation Commission scratched only the surface. They didn't go far enough. I mean, why do you think that we need reconciliation only from 1948 or 1960? What about 1652? Why do you think the land question begins in 1913 and not in 1652? Why do you think the Khoi was genocided by the Dutch? Why do we speak only of the massacre of Sharpeville? We forget the Sekui River massacre of 1775. So those are the mistakes that we're making. The mistakes that I think young people are making today is that they think that they are the first generation to think of these things. They forget that they are building on a foundation. It's a river. It's a river that began way, way, way back in 1510. A river of resistance, a fire of resistance. They are flowing with that river, but you can't just jump in and make as if the river starts with you. You've got to understand, we are the river. We move in different ways when we are pushed to the side, but we always come back, but we remain the river, and we always end up at our end goal, and that's the sea. And as long as we are not there, there are fires that are burning, and you don't start the fire from scratch. What you're actually doing is you're blowing open the embers that have been glowing over so many years. And that's, by the way, the theme of the 8 lectures that I had last year, called The Fire, the River, and the Scorched Earth Between. And that's what I'm doing these days. And so what makes me excited as now I run into young people who ask whether they can come and see me and to talk about these things. They ask, what is it that you guys did that we can learn from? Will you come and speak to a group of us? And I've done so twice, and I will do so again within the next month or so. And so I see that hope in that. And the young people must not make the mistake of thinking there is nothing to fight for. Young people on the campuses, I said that in 2012 to the young people on the campus in Bloemfontein, if you can bring your struggle, think of it, you are fighting a struggle on the university campuses for fees must fall, and so forth. That was before that, fees must fall thing, but you're fighting. What do you think goes on in the minds of those young people that you are no longer in contact with because you are now the privileged who sit on campus? What about those young people who didn't even finish high school? What about those young people who have no hope and no job and no prospect and no opportunity? What about those young people? Your things flare up now and then, but watch, think, look what happened since 1994. Have we ever had 1 month across the country in different places where there was not some protest against service delivery? Not a single month. What if, like the students discovered in 1973 and 74 here, that the cause of the workers out there, the cause of those young people with no opportunities and no prospects, their cause is actually our cause. That's a mistake that you must not make. And so I'm hoping that that could come together. But when I went to see Archbishop Desmond Tutu to talk about his birthday celebration, Eucharist, where the family asked me to preach, at the end of our conversation, it wasn't a long conversation because he was very weak then, but he asked me, what do you think is happening? It's a different form of what people ask me on the streets every day. Doc, do you really think this is what we fought for? And he asked me, where do you see any hope? And I told him about these young people. He said, that's the hope. So in a strange way, this place is a place where young people come. This place is a place where they gather for the transformation of their lives and their minds. This is a place where they come to learn how to articulate those ideals that we articulated and that the generations before us fought for. How do you make those connections? How do I take the struggle forward? How do I continue the transformation? How do I make South Africa a place of justice, a place of dignity, a safe place for the weakest and the most vulnerable among us? That was UWC in my day. And my most fervent prayer is that UWC will be that place for this generation, because our country needs young people more than ever who think like that. And our country needs places more than ever who allow that thinking to take place, who allow that thinking to be enacted in the activism of the students, because it's always about the future. It's always about the future. It's always about the future, and we can shape it.